Hello and welcome to the Disaster Scenario Planning webinar. This webinar is designed to take you through a process for planning for the various situations that may or may not occur when a disaster is present, such as the likes of a pandemic, a COVID-19 pandemic. This is not meant to be a workshop. I'll be running through concepts here fairly swiftly. The session is designed to introduce you to a lot of tools and processes that we can use to have logical, measured thoughts in a timely manner and be able to make some well-informed decisions. Following the webinar, sometime during the next week or two, we'll also be running workshops, which will be live online workshops, and they will use a lot of the content out of this particular webinar. The webinar itself is designed to introduce you to those concepts for future reference, and so we can also be more efficient when we're running the online workshops in the coming weeks. I am Shaun Reeves. I'm a director of SRJWW Wayland. SRJWW Wayland is a firm of business advisors, accountants, auditors that are proudly parochially based in the Moreton Bay region and have been so personally for the last 27 years. We not only do tax, accounting and audit, but we also do a lot of work in business advisory, data analysis. Strategic facilitation is something we focus on. The strategic facilitation is supported by a network that we're involved in called Mindshop, M-I-N-D-S-H-O-P. Just like accountants will have a resource for tax knowledge, research and so forth for our tax work, we for our strategic work have Mindshop as a resource. It's a network, a vault of intellectual property, and also a network of like-minded facilitators, not just accountants though, people from various backgrounds, be it manufacturing, sales, human resources, accounting, etc. Me, myself, I'm a chartered accountant. I have 34 years experience as an accountant. I'm an accredited Mindshop facilitator. Nowadays I do less accounting and more facilitating, more business coaching and so forth. Personally, I'm a business owner. So just like all of you businesses, I am affected by what's going on with this COVID-19 situation. In fact, at the moment, after a failed technological attempt last week at recording the webinar, I'm at home, in home office, set up, working 100% remotely. A husband, a father, and a volunteer. So in those capacities, I point those out only to point out that me, like everyone else, am affected by the impacts on family and the impacts on community. I'm heavily involved with various community organisations, and we're going through the disaster scenario planning in particular in relation to those organisations with complete shutdowns and so forth. One opportunity that is coming out of all of this pandemic situation is the need and the ability to be able to grow with technology and use technology to help meet these challenges. For example, in this particular webinar, I am using my iPad, which I can draw on and highlight as though I have a laser pointer. I can annotate on various pages using a notability app. I'm sharing my iPad with my PC screen using Air Server, and then live sharing my screen on a Zoom webinar platform. During the week, I know we've done a lot of work on Zoom and on Microsoft Teams. Our whole business is transformed across to, or transferred across to Microsoft Teams, and we use that for a lot of internal communication and conferencing and so forth. But it's been a great learning curve for me to be able to get up and running on these platforms. And just by the by, if anyone is looking for any sort of direction as to how to do this, I'm only too happy if you look me up to share a few tips. Good old locus of control. This is something that I like to refer to because just at the moment, I know I feel like the poor guy in chains being pulled in all directions with what's going on around us. I use the locus of control to demonstrate the effect that these things can have on us, these disastrous situations can have on us, and what we might be able to do about that just by trying to solve an elephant-sized problem in bite-sized chunks. I like to refer to a locus of control, in fact, an external locus of control, as being having a confidence in your ability to influence the factors you can control that is greater than your fear of the impact of those that you can't control. In any given situation, you're going to be pulled in all directions by where the economy's at, how your competition's operating, what the banks are doing, response to customer actions and so forth. In the present situation, obviously, we've got a massive chain trying to pull us in another direction again, and that is the COVID-19 virus and what impact it's having on our business. So those with an external locus of control can't often make really good measures decisions in these sort of situations because they just can't see that they can control anything. Some of this is a perception and a self-confidence exercise. So we need to be internally focused. We need to stop worrying quite so much about the things we can't control and make a super effort to start thinking about the things that are within our control and that we might be able to have work to our advantage. The particular process I want to take you through, and just bear with me here, I've got one or two formatting issues that have popped up as a result of my still learning to cope with technology. So whereas it's been broken up a bit, and there are one or two slides in this session where the graphics has gone a bit awry, but it doesn't really detract from the graphic and the learning from it. But many of you have heard about the now, where, how analysis, particularly maybe from the Qantas ad some years ago, where someone was in a strategic planning session and they were booking a flight because they were really bored and distracted. And where are they now was in the office. Where do they want to be is somewhere on a holiday, and how are they going to get there was booking the flight. But seriously, the way we have to go about this is we have to look at where we are now, where it is we might think we need to be, and then only start working out how we're going to get there. The risk is always to jump straight to the how. We should be spending 20% of the time in the now, getting clarity of where we are, 20% where we want to be, the direction, and then once we've spent that 40% of our time clarifying things, we can spend a good solid majority of the time in the how, not 100%. We don't need to go, things are going very ordinarily at the moment. What do I need to do about it? It's the where that is going to be critical to determine the best placed actions for us to move forward. If we're looking at the now analysis, we need to have a look, usually by way of a mind map, is to trying to capture a brain dump of all of the key issues, all of the challenges, the specific concerns. There may even be some opportunities where it might be the potential for us to come out of this particular disaster on the rebound stronger than we were before. Usually when we're doing a now, we like to do some diagnostics as well. We've got some online diagnostics on our website. Those diagnostics around such things as growth and profit, change success, I will talk about some of those things during this presentation. I haven't got any of those diagnostics on the presentation. It's a webinar about process. We usually have those diagnostics in the process, so I've got those highlighted here, and we do have some on our website, and we'll make some links available for that. In relation to the now, as I said, it's best to try to mind map these sort of things. Now, I've started scribbling on here. I've got some key arms of the mind map, and a mind map is nothing more than a brain dump. I find it a really good way to capture a lot of thoughts about a situation, have those up in front of me, and then be able to work through those and make some key decisions. So what we've got here are a number of different factors or arms that you may consider when we're having a look at the mind map. I find these tools are really good. I've been in lots of board meetings and other meetings where discussion goes round and round and round because people aren't capturing what is being said, the points that are being made, and often points come up 2 or 3 times and the same discussion occurs in relation to those points. In those meetings, if we get big sheets of paper, we put those bits of paper up on the wall, whether it's butcher's paper or maybe even a whiteboard or something like that. We can capture thoughts and be very effective about the discussions that we're having. So in this particular situation, now we might be looking at a situation where we're talking about obviously the COVID-19 virus and the impact that that it may be having on us. We've got a situation where I've started making notes about customers being slow to pay. Our supply might be challenged. We've got to make some immediate decisions. We've got to make some immediate decisions about staff. We may even need to make a more immediate decision about the potential for closing doors. In some situations, I know that those decisions around closing doors are being taken out of our hands. We've got key issues around cash flow and debt. It doesn't matter where on the board these points go up, so long as they go up. I mean, I've got an arm here that says financial position, and I'm talking about cash flow and debt here. Doesn't matter, so long as I'm capturing those. But under financial position, I will suggest we need also to have in there some key points about the stimulus package and us requiring not only some knowledge about those, but then also perhaps swift implementation about what's going on with that, and the available support for us in that stimulus package. Specific concerns, again, you don't need to use all of these arms, but you might have things that just come to mind in relation to these, and you can capture them in these various areas. This particular process will be initially, when we're looking at the now and the where, and even the how, it's all about quantity, not quality. We want to get down as many thoughts, as many ideas as we possibly can, and capture these. So I highly recommend you get some butcher's paper or some of those big post-it note sticky sheets, little post-it notes you can get in mega size, and they're fantastic for this sort of planning, provided things aren't shut down already and you can't get out to office to expect them. Find a way to capture all of these thoughts. Once we've got a really solid board, a collection of thoughts about all of the things that we think are impacting us now, we want to move forward to the where analysis. Normally in the where, we would have a look at what our vision is. We might talk about drawing that vision, trying to capture our words in pictures, maybe doing a magic wand analysis of which is, if you wave the magic wand and there were no barriers, what really would you like to achieve in your business? And you can also use this process for your personal life as well. In the current situation though, we want to have a look at trying to quickly capture what our vision might have been And then very quickly having a look at the impact of the current disaster situation on that vision. What I'm going to take you through for the WHERE analysis is a scenario planning tool. What we're going to do with that scenario planning is we're going to say, let's have a look at this disaster and what is it going to mean for us under 3 different scenarios. One will be a low severity scenario, where I'm going to define that as minimal disruption and business as usual. And believe it or not, there are some businesses in that situation. Medium severity is an impact of 10, 20, 25%, maybe up to 50% even on revenue. Impacts also on cash, on our capacity to produce. And high severity is a disaster, over 50% revenue loss or forced closure. And how I'm going to go about this WHERE analysis, again, is a little bit of a mind mapping exercise. But first, what I want to introduce is the concept of the PESTEL analysis. Now, PESTEL is just an anagram, which means, or the 6 letters stand for political aspects and economical, social, technological, environmental, and legal. The reason why it's useful to bear those particular words in that acronym PESTEL in mind is that when you're having a look at a scenario planning type situation, you really want to make sure that you're covering impacts from all different areas. It's very easy to focus, for example, on the economical impact of what's going on at the moment, or the political impact. And we tend to lose sight a little bit of where the technology might be able to help us out, where the social impact might be, and also what it means for us legally, although at the moment I do realise that a number of those impacts legally are relaxing. But I just mentioned the PESTEL so that we bear that in mind when we're having a look at the particular aspects that are going to affect us in the scenario analysis. Now, in the scenario analysis, as I said, we're going to have a look at low, medium, and high severity. And I have provided some definition earlier on those. But what we need to do, again, big sheet of paper, and I've started to populate this one as well. Have a look at the 3 different scenarios. Scenario 1, we might be calling low impact. We need to define this in order to understand what impact it might be going to have on us, and then how we might be able to work around that impact. I have defined low impact as business as usual, minimal impact, and as I said, some businesses are fortunate enough to be in an industry where that is the situation. If I have a look at scenario 2, for example, where I had a medium impact, going live on webinars is always good for challenging your spelling and your grammar and writing. Medium impact was something like a 10, well, the slide said 10 to 20. I reckon it might even be up to about 50% impact on sales and production, capacity, and so forth. We might have supply challenged. We might have to look at reduced team numbers, etc. And then also we're dealing with a situation where we have high impact. And we'll make points about what that means to us. Now, what we need to do in this situation is list down what we are defining as these particular situations before we can move on and have a look at what that might mean for us. I've also, in the Mindshop network, we have some fantastic colleagues and facilitators who share without qualification a lot of intellectual property and resource that they've put together. In this situation, I've used some of the material, not only from the Mindshop network, but also from a couple of facilitators who are good close friends and colleagues of mine, and Michael Burke and Russell Cummings. I call out to those guys, thank you very much. The first bit of resource I'm going to show you, and as I flick through this, you'll get a free advertisement there for some of the software that I'm using, just while I flick through these. Michael Burke has put together this scenario matrix, and he's pointed out that some businesses are going to hit the wall, others are going okay, but there's a lot of uncertainty. Some are actually going to have boom times. It's a time of great opportunity for some businesses that are in food, potentially health, essential services, and everyone in the supply chain for that. What I'm trying to do here is say there are some businesses in opportunity times. You still need to be scenario planning in high, medium, and low impact. High impact for those particular businesses might be a reverse. It might be things are going that fantastic that we can't actually keep up with the demand. I can't get supply. I'm having to ration orders out to my customers. So our three scenarios are not the same as these three scenarios. Each one of these will have a high, medium, and low impact. So we have to be mindful of that. What this particular resource does is it says if you're in a business that looks like you're going to hit the wall, it tries to help prompt you for some of the challenges you're going to have. For example, these survival challenges, the cash flow challenges, the employee challenges. And if I flip over onto the next page, now communication, director's liability, what liability might we have in relation to our ongoing trading and so forth, stress management and so forth. So hopefully this is a really nice, useful resource for you to prompt some thoughts about not only analysing the scenarios, but having a good close look at the particular things, populating your mind the now, and getting some really solid thoughts down on paper. So before we head into the how, I'll just flip back across to the presentation. Before we head across to the how, we should be in a position where we have maybe 4 big sheets of paper up on the wall. We've got a mind map that details all of the issues that we're going through at the moment, where our now is, what our key issues are, what our immediate concerns are, and so forth. And then we've got a sheet for each of our different scenarios, our low impact that shows what all of our assumptions are, how those things might be going to affect us. Medium impact and high impact, same. So we've got all of those sort of things out in front of us, ready to keep on working. And as I say, quantity, not quality at this point. Let's keep generating those ideas. Now that we move into the how, we're going to use a few different tools for this. FMEA, failure mode effect analysis. Each of the tools that we're going to use here are to control something. The failure mode effect analysis is to try to control risk. We'll also have a look at the 7 wastes. What we're trying to do is control cost and cash flow. The 4 ways to grow. Believe it or not, in these times, there will be opportunities arise for some businesses. Some of those opportunities will only come because we're forced into lateral thinking about where our business can go, how it may have to adapt. As those opportunities grow up, we can have a look at those opportunities in 4 different sectors, and I'll take you through that. And then I'll also introduce you to the concept of the force field analysis, which is a tool to control as I said before, discussion and process so that we have really solid, targeted, good discussions that come up with really good outcomes. And I'll also actually have a look at the PARETO principle to help try to make some really good, sharp decisions. But moving forward to the failure mode effect analysis, what FMEA does is we have a look at the potential mode or failure. So what we do here is under each of the scenarios we've got, if it looks like we want to plan for the high impact scenario on us, then there are going to be a number of impacts. There are going to be a number of failures, which we've probably caught in our assumptions somewhere. So if we have a look at those assumptions, and the ones admittedly I've got here as examples by way of failure in the contact program and in sales conversions, in the light of things, they're not really all that disastrous. But we might have something in there about total lack of supply. We might have something in there that says we've got a potential impact that we have a positive coronavirus case in our office. They're the sorts of things that might pop up as impacts and assumptions under that scenario analysis. So what we do is we capture those, capture the ones that we think are most critical to us, or in fact, you can get another big sheet of paper and capture them all in this sort of format. We then have a look at the potential effects of the failure. In this case, again, fairly low end in the current situation, sort of failures, but in relation to sales conversions, the potential effects, we've got an inconsistent approach, we've got a lack of sales skills. Those effects may have come about because of a lack of training. So we go from the mode of failure to the effects of the failure, the causes, and then also consider the control or the control mechanisms or protection methods to say, well, how might we be able to identify what's going on here? What might our lead indicators be in this regard? No accountant can do a session without having some numbers in the need for multiplication, so forgive me on that one, but I've got some in here. What we have a look at is in relation to each of these modes of failure, we have a look at the potential severity and rate that severity on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is virtually no, not severe at all, and 10 is an absolute crisis. We then rank each one in relation to the likelihood of occurrence. Is it likely never to happen, or is it almost certain to happen? Again, on a scale of 1 through 10 on that. Finally, we rank 1 through 10 on detection. Are we absolutely able to pick it up, or is it going to pop up and smack us around without us realising it was even coming? One good way to do the ranking when you're going through a situation like this, so you get your ranking nice and uniform, is to have a look at each of the modes of failure and say which one is the most severe, and let's rank that a 9, and which one is the least severe, so, and we'll rank it a 1 or a 2. And then it's easier to put all of the other ones in there in accordance with that particular scale. Same for occurrence and detection. What we then do is we multiply them out, hence the accounting and the mathematics in it. But we get this risk priority number. What this allows us to do is it allows us to focus not only on all of the risks that might pop up, but the key risks, the ones that are going to be most critical to us. Obviously, the higher the risk priority number, the most severe that risk is likely to be, the more likely it's going to pop up, and the least likely we're going to be able to see it coming. So we rank all of those. And in relation to risks, I like my risks to have an RPN less than 100. That way I know that it's not necessarily all that severe, and even if it is getting up there on the severity rate ranking, I'm going to be able to see it coming. And I've made measures to ensure that I'm trying to stop it coming, if at all, but I'm monitoring at the same time. Now, if your risk priority number is above, say 100 as a benchmark, which both of these are, what this tool does is it allows us to have a really good conversation, a quick pointed conversation about how we might go about fixing some of these issues. For example, sales conversions, we've said the severity is an 8. What do we have to do? Let's list some action plans for the things we think we can do to reduce the severity of those sales conversions. And it might be around some of this training stuff. It might be having a look at the particular products that we're using, and maybe we're not getting the sales conversions because they're not the right products, etc. We can then have a look at the occurrence. So is it almost certain that we're going to fail in our sale conversions, or can we bring that down? What can we do to improve the impact of what we're of our actions on sales conversions? And then our detection. And in relation to sales conversions, this might be a bit of a tricky concept, but in relation to detection, we are looking at, for example, being able to foresee whether or not we're going to have an issue converting someone to a sale. Is it almost impossible? It's going to hit you out of the blue that you think you've got it in the bag and, well, no, it's gone? Or are you in control of that sales process and know exactly where you are, and you can understand what the outcome is likely to be? So we can have a look at how we try to reduce our 8 down, our 8 there down, and our 5 down. So when we multiply out, we get under 100, and we've ended up with a heap of different actions in here that we can put up on our sheets of paper and then work out our priorities for action. 7 wastes, as I said, is about controlling cash flow and controlling costs. We break it down into 7 wastes. You can do it in any number of ways you wish. We use overproduction, waiting, transporting, inappropriate processing, carrying unnecessary inventory. That's obviously a cost in that. Unnecessary motions through an office, through a factory floor, and then also defects and potential rework or waste. So the way we do this is we have a look at a waste audit, and under each of those headings, we will highlight particular areas. Overproduction, we've got errors. Some of these things might pop up a couple of times. Defects and errors, defects in overproduction. We're producing things without having our sales guaranteed, etc., etc. So these are all just brainstorming areas of potential waste. We then say, well, if we could fix that and remove that issue, what cost effect would that have? What cost saving would there be? Once we've gone through all of the 7 wastes and generated all of our ideas, we have a look at the total potential cost saving. This sort of exercise can be critical in the current situation because we could be really stretched for cash flow, stretched for sales, and under immense stress in that regard. To add another dimension to this, what we often do is we'll have a look at the ease of removal. And the ease of removal is another way to help us have a look at how to prioritise actions. So on a scale of -5 to +5, so anything that's negative is difficult, anything that's positive is easy, but then there are degrees of difficulty and degrees of easiness. And what we want to do here is we want to try to identify those areas that on balance have greater cost savings that are easier to remove. This particular example is a bit tricky because when we have a look at the ones that are all a bit easier, cost savings are a bit low. Doesn't mean we don't do them. They might be low-hanging fruit. Let's get them locked over, lock in that saving. But we really want to be having a look, perhaps, for example, at stock layout and storage, where we're up there. It's getting towards the easier scale, but the numbers here are a bit bigger. Waiting time, duplication, all of these big ticket items, are pretty tricky to do, even though they've got big numbers. So we only have so much time and energy. We really need to focus on those areas where we're going to get maximum impact for minimum effort. So it's an ease and impact type situation. Now, on this particular exercise, again, I'll go thank you to one of our colleagues, Russell Cummings, put this one together for me, and it's some examples of waste. So if you're struggling to have a think about what areas you might be able to improve on and waste, what Russell's done for us is he's got a page effectively on each of the particular areas that we're looking at. This one's over production, and then for each different business style, whether it's manufacturing, service industry, wholesale, retail, professional practice, there's a whole prompt of different wastes that we might be able to identify that might be relevant to us. So big thanks to Russell Cummings at Strategic Business Development, now I think called Shift Consulting down on the Gold Coast. So thanks, Russell, for that. Moving back to the slideshow, in any situation like this, it's important under all of the stress we're under to have a think about whether or not there's any potential for growth. Where has our business come from in the past? Where do we think it should come from? What's the impact on our cash flow of the potential growth strategies? Now, when you put that into the context of a disaster situation, let's have a think about the impact of this scenario, whether or not our business needs to shift, whether it needs to shift into new markets, whether it needs to shift into new products, whether we can penetrate further with our existing products into existing markets. I know that some businesses are currently doing that where they're in demand. They might be agriculture farmers, they might be seed growers, they might be medical products. Those particular companies have the ability to penetrate that market further, provided that their supply lines are right. We can expand our existing products into new markets. Really, in this sort of situation that we're in at the moment, a lot of it is about the potential for product expansion and diversification. What new products might we be able to generate if our current products are under threat, and use our existing contacts for that? Or what new products can we push into new markets? What's really interesting in this particular one, I saw an example where fashion designers and fashion houses had taken to producing masks. So it's a new product for them, and they're pushing it into non-traditional markets. So they are an industry under threat because of retail taking an absolute fighting in the current situation, but they've stopped and had a thought about how they might be able to use their current infrastructure to create opportunities for their business. We can also have a look at that graphically. This is just a little bit of a table as to how people think about things differently. You might mind map, for example, how to push your existing products into new markets. You might draw a few pictures about how you're feeling. The fact that if you're trying to push new products into new markets, you might be out on a limb a little bit. Sometimes those things need high profit. What timing is there? What risk is involved? So again, this is just a way of capturing thoughts to get them down on paper to be able to effectively plan and create some really good action plans. In relation to growth, there are often barriers. barriers aren't always negative. Barriers, if overcome, can really push us forward. It's important to have a think about what the current barriers are to growth. There is obviously a big one smacking us in the face at the moment with trade particularly down. But what I like to do when using this process in good times as well as challenging times is identify what our key barriers to growth are and identify the top two. What are our top two couple of barriers to growth? I'll then move on into force field analysis. What my force field analysis does is identifies a key issue, which we place in the middle of the force field. On the left-hand side, we'll list all of the positive forces, those things that we have working in our favour to overcome this particular issue. And on the right-hand side, I'll list all of the negative forces, all of those things that are working against us, not necessarily the barriers, but the negative forces working against us. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. Then we generate more action items. So this is again about action items. What actions can we take to double the impact of the positive forces and to halve the impact of the negative forces? We then go through a process of prioritising. But at the moment, again, we're still quantity, not quality. We're nearly at the quality stage. So what our force field analysis looks like is this, and I've already started to scribble on this one a little bit, but you can see that an age-old problem is I want to overcome the issue of I want to be able to have more time. What are the things that I have working in my favour at the moment? I've got, say, a good team around me. I've got some fairly simple objectives and clear KPIs that I want to achieve. I know how to run some pretty proactive meetings. We've got some good technology in place to be able to Skype and Zoom, for example, so I'm not necessarily wasting a heap of time on the road when my time is precious. And at the moment, it's always hard with all the worry, but let's say that I've got some pretty high energy. On the negative side, even though I've got a good team, I'm still lacking some of the key resources that I might need. My email usage is pretty poor. Now that's really touching a sore point there because email is one of the bones of my life. So I'm really working hard on trying to be able to manage that. Too many jobs. Have I taken on too much? Distractions. Things popping up during the day, particularly at this time when you've got crisis calls happening from customers or from team or whoever. And am I spreading myself too thin? Am I trying to cover too much territory? So they're the positive and negative forces. Then you can see what I've done here is I've listed a number of actions that I could take to really expand, really increase this strong positive force. Because let's say, where am I in relation to being time poor? Now I've said here, maybe I'm about a -2 on a scale of -5 to +5. And I want to be up here at around a +3. So I've got to get some really solid actions that are going to really force me across there and force it up to a +3. And on the other side, I want to halve these things. I want to weaken those forces. So what actions can I take? And in relation to email, maybe I only check email at set times. Let's change the culture around CCing everybody into things. Are there any other tools that I can use where my emails are going to diminish, like Workplace by Facebook or like Microsoft Teams and so forth? In relation to the force field, what we will have as a link is a blank force field analysis here to work on. So that gives you a blank piece of paper to give you an idea as to how to run that exercise. So ripping through quickly because time's moving on with force field. Now, what we've got is we've got a mind map about the now. We've got aware analysis with 3 scenarios, giving us all of the assumptions around our low, medium, high impact, taking into account our PESTEL analysis. We've got some how. We've got the failure mode effect analysis, where we have a look at those potential failures and we start planning as to how we can minimise or bring down our risk score. We've got the 7 wastes. What things can we do to bring down cost and control costs? We've had a bit of a look at growth and potential markets. What could we do there? If there are any barriers to growth or any particular big, ugly key issues that we've got, we've put a force field around those. Next is the quality stage. Now, you've got a stack of things to do and you can work through all day long which ones are a higher priority. Lots of different people are going to have lots of different opinions in this respect. What we use is the PARETO analysis. And what the PARETO analysis says, it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of your happiness comes from 20% of what you do. 20% of your profits come from, or 20% of your problems. Let's start that again. 80% of problems come from 20% of customers. 80% of your profits come from 20% of your customers. And it's really interesting to do that calculation as to where your most profitable customers are. 80% of your energy comes from 20% of the people that you associate with. And likewise, 80% of your negativity comes from 20% of those people that you associate with that might have negative energies. So what we do here is we're trying to find the 20% of those actions that we've just put up all around the place, which 20% of those actions are going to give us 80% of the impact. Now, without any massive analysis, there's a really easy way to do this. If you've got a number of people involved in helping you do the planning, and you've got sheets of paper with actions all around the room, give everyone a pen and say you'll get 3 votes or 4 votes or 5 votes, depending on how many actions you've got up around the place and how many of you there are. Just go around and tick what you think are the key issues. And what people are going to go to are those things that are going to be easiest to do with maximum impact usually. So the things that are going to give you the 20% of things that are going to give you 80% of the impact. Once we've captured those, we'll group those into similar strategies. Some of those strategies might be around what we're going to do around cash flow. Some of the strategies might be around trying to find opportunities and new business opportunities. Some of the strategies might be around customer strategies. So let's group all of those together and then capture those in the one-page plan. Now, the one-page plan is a document that sets out, summarizes the now, those things we said, those key issues around the now, where we want to be, the key strategies, and from those groupings of key strategies, all of the actions that come up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put some discipline in place. We're going to ask for some hands. Who's going to do it? And when's it going to be done by? So we've got an illustrated, recorded strategy of who's going to do what. These one-page plans are live documents. They should roll forward, they should be working documents, and you should be getting to a point where you can cross these things out. And crossing things out has the bonus of giving you a real boost in energy, saying, yep, got something done. Yep, got something else done. And this is part of the secret behind that locus of control. Having a greater confidence in being able to influence the things we can influence than we have fear of those things we can't. Really important that we just do something. With the one-page plans, we can also cascade those. We can have total organisation plans, which have different departments in each of them. So each of the strategies we had in this plan might break out into a one-page plan for somebody who looks after a particular department or section, or, as I say, person by person. So we can cascade those plans down. One of the key issues is, are we ready for this? What I'm talking about here is our potential, our change success model. What is our potential for change? Now, in this particular presentation, I do have a number of charts with a bit of information on them, but I'm only going to talk to this first page just so I can introduce the concept to you. The change success model was put together by Dr. Chris Mason, the founder of Mindshop, and it's part of a thesis for his PhD in psychology. What he did was he surveyed hundreds of organisations and he had a look at high achieving organisations and what factors meant that they stood out from some of the average performing organisations. And he broke things down into three main areas: the beliefs around change, the capability for change, and an organisation's readiness for change. And each of those areas, he broke them out further. So for beliefs, for argument's sake, we had our perceived difficulty in being able to achieve solid change, our own attitudes towards change. Do we need it, or will we just a bit, nah, we'll get by? And also the attitudes of those others around us that are significant influences in what we do. In each of these areas, Dr. Chris identified that in organisations, in high success organisations, the belief system accounted for about 30% of change success potential. Readiness was about 30%. And in readiness, he was talking about supportive leaders. Is there a need for change? Is there a strong what's in it for me in amongst the workers? Is there a process? And is there an underlying confidence in that particular organisation? 40% was around capability, the organisational capability to achieve change and the people capability. So this particular exercise, without going into too much detail around it at the moment, is really useful to help us understand, are we set right? Do we have a good foundation for positive change? Do we have these things in place? Do a gap analysis for yourself. Just list these, how many are there? 5, 10 factors down on a sheet of paper and score yourself on the scale of either 1 to 10, 1 to 6, 1 to 20, on where you and your organisation is at in relation to each of these factors. And then say, for example, in order to achieve really good solid change, where do we need to be in each of those factors? Look for the biggest gap and then generate some actions, some more actions in relation to that gap. So in relation to attitude, for argument's sake, if we've got an attitude where change is really hard and we're resisting change, you might be at a 2 out of 10, and you really need to have a good positive attitude to be an 8 out of 10. You've got a gap of 6 there. In other areas, you might have gaps of, say, 2 or 3. Down in organisational and people capacity, you might have some larger gaps of 7 and 8. These other gaps might only be small, but what again it does is it helps you prioritise and say, where are our biggest gaps? Biggest gaps are in here, so they're the key areas we have to work on. So what are our actions? That's a really interesting way to break it down. So where are we? In summary, the objective is of this process is to collect all the core actions into a clear one-page plan. Might be for the next 30 days. At the moment, it might actually, trying to do a question mark there, it might actually be for the next 7 days. In some cases, it might be a bit of crisis planning for the next 24 hours. But it's a way of being able to capture all of our potential actions and then prioritise them into an effective plan. Are we capable of achieving change? Where do we sit in relation to our change success model? Now, let's ensure we can keep this plan current. We should be crossing things off, and when we cross things off, we should be putting other things on. We should be putting new things, new ideas that pop up, or we should be putting those things that didn't quite necessarily make the 80-20 rule initially, but then pop up an importance after that once we're ticking things off. We need to make sure we've got solid communication around this. What are your communication tools? How are you communicating with the team, particularly at a time where you might have to do that remotely? Let's set objectives, key results, KPIs, whatever you want to do, and accountability for actions. And some of those KPIs just might mean in the next 24 hours, someone needs to tick off, for example, 4 actions. Forget about turnover numbers, forget about productivity, forget about any of that stuff. What is it? What do your indicators need to be in this time of crisis? Prepare to pivot. Pivot's a big word used a lot at the moment with strategic facilitators. All it means is that you've got your vision, you've had to think about how this virus might be affecting it, and all of a sudden you find that things are different. Pivot back, reset the plan, reset the vision, reset the actions, and fire forward again. Just keep doing stuff. It's often said that a prize fighter only loses a fight when he stops getting up off the canvas. So get back into your corner, replan, and go back down there and keep on swinging at this virus. Now, some final thoughts. Your war room. In your business, you might like to have one of these war rooms. Get a place where all of these sheets of paper that I was talking about are up around the wall. It's a place where you go to be precise, to make decisions and plan action. It's available for everybody. They can go in, they can remind themselves of what needs to be done, have a look at the plans, the lists, the factors and everything. It might even be a place where you meet, not only a physical place, but maybe a virtual place where you meet to plan these actions, to huddle, to say, what are we going to do? What are we going to do today? I know in my business, my leadership team get together at 8:15 every morning on a Microsoft Teams meeting to say what's happened in the last 24 hours. Do we need to pivot? Do we need to fire forward? Or do we need to pick some more things up off the action plan that weren't there? Look after yourself. If you are present, you are mindful. If you're thinking too much about the future, anxiety is going to set in. If you're thinking about the past, that's where we can capture depression. If we're in the present and we're doing stuff, we're in our mindful state, that's the best place to be. Put whatever support around you you need to have to be in that mindful place. So, next steps, decide on who you're going to have involved. Just do it. Just start doing stuff because, as I said, be present, be mindful, pivot, work the way you need to work to take action. Review this plan weekly. It might even be daily as we go. And on the plan, I've got a modified one-page plan for you, which you'll have access to, which is this particular disaster scenario plan. So you can see here that what I've done is I've captured on this particular page the results from our diagnostic, our now analysis, our PESTEL severity and impact, and what we're going to do about it in relation to our low severity plan, medium severity plan, and high severity plan. Blow this up, make it a massive sheet of paper, break it down into a number of different sheets, do whatever you like. That's going to be a really useful tool for you. So review that plan as regularly as you need, daily huddle if necessary, set a time, a place and a format for your next catch-up, a war room, a physical one, or a virtual one. But most importantly, survive and do as much as you can to prosper. Look after yourself, lean on whoever you need to lean on to do this, but try to stay mindful, try to stay positive and look for those opportunities, because let's hope we're going to get a solid rebound out of this. And we need to not still be licking wounds when that rebound comes. We need to be in a position to be able to take advantage of it. We will have links come out to you to support this webinar, and those links will include the tools and the presentation that we've got. Also look in the next week or so for the workshops. a challenging thing, but what we're going to try to do is run online workshops for this with interaction. Obviously, we'll need to limit numbers, so we'll need to run a few of those workshops, but keep your eye out for them. They will be virtual workshops run on Zoom. They'll go for about 2.5 hours. What you'll need to do to get on those workshops, though, is you'll need to revisit some of the concepts in this particular webinar and start making some notes. And those workshops will be assuming that you're across these concepts, and it'll be helping you tease out the action plans and helping you to prioritise the next steps for you. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you've had some real value out of this, and good luck.